And now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Constance Ikoku. Good morning, Constance.
A very good morning to you, Charles. Happy Thursday, they say.
Oh yeah, happy Thursday indeed.
And to Yolanda, how are you today?
Good morning, I'm well, thank you. Looking lovely in blue today.
Oh, thank you. You look excellent too.
Thank you.
I like the word excellent. Well, to look at the papers with us this morning, we have Igor Akerega. He is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day newspaper. For denigrating Nigeria, you can drop Kemi from your name, Shettima tells Badenoch. Vice President Kashim Shettima, like many other Nigerians, is miffed at how the conservative leader in the United Kingdom, Kemi Badenoch, who is also of Nigerian origin, relishes every opportunity to take a swing at her country of origin. She talks about neighbors screaming while they were being boggled in Nigeria when she grew up there in the 80s. I mean, a few other, things that she has said about Nigeria being a place where almost everything is broken, where it's full of tears. Well, we can look at this and say a few names for Kemi, for instance. Maybe she can bear Samantha Badenoch, or Cynthia, or Mary Jane, or one of those names to suit her current profile and persona. But does she really need to all the time take a punch at Nigeria, to make her point? She has achieved her aim, which is becoming the conservative leader in the UK. There are so many other global leaders, from the global south who come from, who are in the West, come from the global south, but get on with the work without having to talk about every single challenge that they face from where they came from originally.
Well, I will start from what her spokesman, the reaction of her spokesperson. The spokesman to Kemi says that she's not the PRO for Nigeria. So if you are taking
this is not about public relations.
No, if you are taking it from there, I do not think the federal government has paid her to speak for the country. She has her own personal experiences.
That's right.
Even though I don't agree completely with all the issues that she has raised. But as Nigerians, every day, we still experience some of these issues that she talks about. Don't forget, she was born in the UK, but raised in Lagos in 1980. And she talked about the economic situation at the time, the fear, the insecurity, and all of that, those related issues. Can we honestly, as Nigerians, say that we have overcome all of those challenges? So the vice president, it is not enough to always take a swipe at anybody who does not speak well of Nigeria. The issues are that he's now vice president. He's in the saddle. I expect them to sit down and work. Just yesterday, the president is saying that he cannot guarantee 24-hour power supply to Nigeria. That is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So these issues are there. So when people speak the truth, it is not for us, to take on them and start a fight. It is a wake-up call for us to also fix our country. That's the way I look at it.
Well, she said, and I quote, "I watched my family become poor as their wealth, income, and savings were inflated away by destructive government policies." They didn't call it socialism, but it definitely was. This has generated debate about capitalism versus socialism. I mean, many countries in Europe mix both, both philosophies, capitalism and socialism. It depends on how it's administered on each country. I mean, even the United Kingdom has its many challenges. The party that she leads, the Conservative Party, up till now in the past few years, it took a lot of destructive policies that has brought it almost to its knees, Charles.
Come to think of it, is Kemi Badenoch lying? I don't think so. As for the issue of capitalism and socialism, Nigeria has never had any issues with that. I mean, we definitely are capitalist. I'm not sure we've had any government that has operated based on the socialist agenda. The problem with us is, the implementation of policies, no matter how well intended. And that's the reason why we have these problems we have to deal with all the time. And it's actually very obvious to the rest of the world. Remember the former British Prime Minister David Cameron said something about Nigeria being an incredibly corrupt country. I think that adjective is not exactly accurate, quoting him. But, well, he did say that. So what the vice president said about Kemi Badenoch, if I were him, I would have tried to prove him wrong. Rather, if I were him, I would have tried to prove her wrong instead of asking her to do a change of name.
Well, is this an issue of trying to prove anyone wrong? The point is, you do not need to punch Nigeria to continue to do your job in the United Kingdom. You can get on with it. You're doing what you have to do anyway.
Even Nigerians here in Nigeria take a swipe at Nigeria. I mean, she's Nigerian, isn't she? Or
all right.
Maybe not.
Okay, the Guardian newspaper. Future of opposition uncertain as politicians begin realignment. Also related to that story, Tinubu will seek re-election. Opposition can't stop him, says Bwala. Bwala is the special advisor on public communication and media to the president. He said the president will not only contest, but will win. Let's even start with the fact that Bwala still has a face to speak after all that happened. He is the communications advisor. So the idea of the ruling party not losing election in Nigeria is an issue of, yes, they may not lose, but it's not because they are particularly popular. It's also because of the issues we have with the Electoral Commission.
Well, Nigeria is a country of so many shameless people, people who are ready to sell their birthright for anything, So I'm not surprised when people come, people like Daniel Bwala. We know his story. I won't this morning begin to speak on his character, and I think Nigerians know better. But for me, I think his reaction stems from last week's election in Ghana that has been commended across the globe. Ghana clearly is showing the way on how elections should be conducted. In fact, Ghanaian electors went to the polls, some without voters' card. All you needed to just tell the polling officers is your name, and then they enter it, do your biometrics, and you're allowed to vote, and results are transmitted real-time online. So that is the way to go. It is not people like the INEC chairman, Professor Yakubu, who will always promise Nigerians that this election cycle is going to be different from the previous ones, only for it to turn out to be the worst. So for the conversation should now shift to electoral reforms. What can we do as Nigerians to ensure that our electoral process is not only transparent, but is credible and acceptable to all, such that nobody goes to court? We've never heard the Vice President Bawumia saying he's going to court to challenge. In fact, he congratulated John Mahama, who is in the opposition and won the election. That is the way to go. So people should not say Africans cannot conduct their own affairs. At least we are not seeing evidence. We are not seeing results coming out of African countries. Ghana is just a small country next door to Nigeria, and they've done it well. So people like Daniel Bwala should be telling their principals that, look, the only way to leave a legacy is to ensure that our electoral process is refined, is reformed, such that it becomes acceptable to all. The outcome, nobody is within Tinubu's right to contest in 2027. Nobody is saying cannot contest. But when you have failed clearly on your own policies, then you shouldn't be rubbing it on the faces of Nigerians that whether anybody likes it or not, you will contest and you will win elections. It should be that Nigerians, if Nigerians vote for you, you will win election. Not that you will win election. There's a caveat to that.
Okay, talking about failing on its policies, Daniel Bwala actually said that in 2027, the president's performance will determine whether he will win. But as I said earlier, there's also the electoral issue, electoral reforms that we talked about, Charles.
Of course, the issue of electoral reforms has very much been on the front burner. Maybe we took a step in the right direction, but it seems to have slowed down because in spite of all the efforts made in that direction, somehow there are still loopholes that are being exploited by politicians. And of course, the electoral umpire itself, I think sometimes the performance is questionable. Maybe they have to borrow a leaf from the former INEC chairman, Professor Jega. I mean, his conduct of the election that brought in the APC government, as far as I know, is exemplary. So I am very sure, I mean, I want to remain positive that when it comes to electoral reforms, it just takes that political will for us to get it right.
And he was appointed by former President Goodluck Jonathan.
Absolutely.
Surprisingly, people were thinking that Jonathan would pick someone from his region, but you know, he wanted a free and fair election, and he got it. Daily Trust. Reps probe customs over smuggling brutality at borders. The House of Representatives committees on customs and exercise alongside defense were asked to investigate activities of the Nigerian Customs Service at borders for complicity in aiding and smuggling and involvement in brutality against Nigerians. I mean, it would appear, that the Nigerian customs is synonymous with smuggling and illegal activities. This is not new at all, these allegations.
Usually, it's difficult to separate the pot from the kettle. The customs is charged with constitutional responsibility to generate excise duties from imported items, provide security at our land borders, and several other responsibilities. But we have found them also getting involved in some of these atrocious activities, smuggling, killing people at the border, corruption, accepting bribes from people to allow illegal migration, and all, even though they are not immigration really, but you know, at the borders, security agencies work in synergy, so the customs can also check illegal migration, illegal movement of goods and services that is not in conformity with the ECOWAS protocol on free movement of goods and services. So I'm not surprised that the customs is being indicted, but my worry really is, can the House of Reps go the whole hog beyond just holding these probes, coming up with the television optics and making it look like people are working. We've not seen people properly indicted, people removed from their positions, or even prosecuted, and all of that. So the impunity we have in the country is really part of the challenge that has led to the seeming backwardness in terms of policy implementation.
All right, Delhi Independent will add 150 megawatt of electricity to the grid before year end, according to the federal government, as the national grid collapses 12th time in 2024. The Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, said this after a closed-door meeting with the president. I mean, Charles, is it to be believed we've had similar promises in the past?
I am very, very skeptical about this. I mean, 12 power grid collapses and someone is talking about adding 150 megawatts. As far as I'm concerned,
is it even sufficient?
That's even very meager. I mean, who is bragging about 150 megawatts? I mean, if you were talking about 15,000 megawatts or 1,500 megawatts, you know, the 1.5 figure, then of course I'll say it's heartwarming. But then 150 megawatts, that's
Charles,
not something to beat your chest
it's
about.
interesting
seriously.
you should say that, Charles, because I was curious and said, what is this 150 megawatts? What can it do? And what I found is that it's just enough to power a small city or charge millions of smartphones. And that was really staggering to read and find out, because when the average person sees 150, you imagine that this is some, you know, big enhancement that's going to happen. And I actually have a little quip, you know, it's the 12th, and on the 12th day of Christmas almost, that they're saying to, now we're having this promise of what will happen before the year ends, which is in 2 weeks. And for this time of year that everybody is, you know, trying to enjoy their time, you know, the economy is bad enough, you know, having some downtime, 150, it's a very sad reality.
Come to think of it, you know, all the electricity infrastructure problems, even if you add the 150 megawatts, would it even get distributed? There is a fundamental problem to fix even before you can even celebrate the addition of the 150 megawatts. Sorry, 150 megawatts.
Yes. All right. So there was a meeting between President Bola Tinubu and the President of Germany and the Minister of Power. So they were obviously talking about electricity. There was this power project that they are discussing. So let's see how that goes. Other papers to look at this morning. Daily Sun, 2027, Tinubu will win presidency. That's a story we've seen before. Ex-APC chair bumps governors. FG raises concern over infant mortality rate. Reps task commercial banks, fintech operators on one chance criminals. We also have the Punch. Nigerians face blackout as gas producers cut supply to Gencos. We have 2.7 trillion debt on power. Power Minister, Presidency aware of the situations, according to Gencos. Nigeria, Germany to deepen ties at Tinubu hosts German president. Ramfac Tinubu panel differ on VAT sharing formula. Bank workers blame CBN as cash shortage worsens. Now to the international headlines. Citizen newspaper. Millions more for cabinet fat cuts. Government of National Unity executives cost taxpayers over 200 million rand more annually. And people are not happy about that in South Africa. Why 77 members, including newly appointed ministers, deputy ministers, the executive annual expenditure now exceeds 1 billion rand. I mean, in a country with high unemployment rate, you can't blame citizens for expressing disappointment, Yolanda, with this. They want the cabinet reduced, actually.
Well, Dr. Constance, I hate to say this, but this is sounding a lot like the African story. Everywhere in Africa now, we are just having these issues of political looting and these millions for cabinet fat cats, as the headline says. It's truly heartbreaking when you look at our economies and the troubles that the everyday man is facing, and yet on the political scene, so much, there's no financial prudence and there's no honesty or public trust in governments at all.
After all, it's looking as if all African politicians are not about service, but just feathering their nest whenever they get into positions.
Not all, some. There are those that are there for service.
Just take that as a figure of speech.
Right.
Of course, there definitely will be some difference somewhere.
Okay, Chad this morning, we're looking at Chad. We hear that the French troops are withdrawing from that country, about 2,000 of them. Remember that Chad had broken the defense pact that he had with France, the former colonial power. Other countries also did that: Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic. So, coming here, the French are being kicked out.
Yes, absolutely. These are not good times for the French.
Right.
Don't forget, these countries that are asking France to leave now, they were once in bed as their colonial masters.
Yes.
They had very robust relationships, but I think the problem started with one, worsening economic situation of those countries, where France as a country seeks to even dominate their local currencies. That's one. And then, of course, you also, they are confronted with the issues of insecurity, banditry, insurgency, and terrorism, which made many of these countries, to invite France as their big brother to come in, set up military bases, and help them fight these invading forces. But as it were, the situation became worse, with the countries turning around to accuse France of even aiding and abetting the terrorists. So they just got fed up, and then they mustered the courage to tell the big almighty France to take their soldiers and just get out.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, while they are kicking France out,
Nigeria is inviting
them.
Yes,
Nigeria appears to be warming up to France. We hope we can get some benefits from them. Well, but Nigerians are really watching very closely how the development plays out.
Absolutely.
I mean, it depends on how agreements are structured.
Yes.
We also have a story from Sudan. We don't have the paper, but that country has been, in turmoil. Former Janjaweed leader Ali Mohammed Al-Rahman is facing crimes against humanity and war crimes at the International Criminal Court for crimes committed against citizens between 2003 and 2004 conflict in the eastern part of the country. The Janjaweed leader, we remember, was in collusion with the government in Khartoum when the conflict went on. There were over 300,000 deaths and over 250,000 refugees during that period. Today, the country is still in turmoil, conflict, and it's like most people actually forget that Sudan is currently in war, Charles.
Sudan apparently happens to be Africa's basket case at this time. The country is absolutely in shambles, probably worse than the situation in Libya. And unfortunately, the former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir did not read the handwriting on the wall. Remember, there was a time the World Court actually issued a warrant for his arrest to face war crimes. And this time around, it is his cohort, the leader of the Janjaweed militia, facing the same charges. So yes, both men should be held squarely responsible for the state of affairs in Sudan. Well, the Sudanese actually did try to get rid of al-Bashir, but then they still have a bigger problem on their hands now. And I wonder what the African Union is doing, because this issue does not get to make the headlines at all.
Daily Mail, little Sarah let down by everyone supposed to protect her. This poor little girl was killed by her father, Ufan Sharif. She was beaten to death. In an act of brutality. The father fled to Pakistan thereafter with his accomplice wife. Today, they are being made to pay for their crime. Yolanda, what cannot describe what family feel about this incident that occurred in the United Kingdom?
Absolutely. This is very devastating, especially because she was just a 10-year-old, such a small child. And reports actually say as well that social services actually knew about this case. It was red lighted to them, but they didn't act on time. And she was only found a day after her family had fled. Absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know how else to express this.
We also have the story from Philippines of Sarah Duterte, the vice president, who is being made to face the law. And she said she was a no-show during her trial. We remember that she made a threat to the president and his wife and the House Speaker when she said that she's hired assassins to kill them if she herself is found there killed. You know, so she's supposed to face the law, and she did not appear. Eagle.
Well, it's an interesting story when I read your report. And don't forget, Sarah was a very good ally of the current president, Marcos Jr., President Marcos Jr. They fell out last year. Apparently, you know how these things are. Maybe the sharing of political interest here and there. She's been accused of corruption, abuse of office, and all kinds of situations. And she felt threatened herself, and then in a press conference said that she had hired a hitman, that if she gets killed, that the hitman should go after the president and the sister and all of that. So I think that is what happened. But it's not good news coming from the Philippines.
Okay.
Well, at this point, we would like to say a very big thank you to Mr. Igor Akerega and, of course, Dr. Constance Ikoku, our newspaper analyst on the program. And that's all we have time for here on Daybreak. It's goodbye from me, Charles Eruka.
Please do keep it here on Arise News. I'm Yolanda Robert. The morning show is next. Goodbye.